holidays, we were in the middle of the topic of Israel's redemption, trying to develop the vision, to understand, to see, to appreciate the significance of our times, what Hashem is doing, turning the Jewish people back to the land of Israel. So what? What's that mean? What's that so important? What does it mean to us and to the world? So to summarize one point, we said how what the rabbis call the natural redemption takes place in stages. Stages means it develops, developmental process, not all complete, not all perfect right away. And some people are very disappointed. This isn't what they expected, what they waited for, what they wanted. Like the parents were told, your son will be a rabbi, a scholar, a professor. He's born and they don't see exactly the professor or the rabbi there. But rather we understand it takes place in stages. There's the infancy, childhood, adolescence, adulthood. There's stages, development, until that full inner expression, inner content appears and is revealed. But those that, again, expecting, when it comes to the redemption, the Jewish people coming back to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, to lead the world with God's name in them, to show that the holiness in this world, in life, that it assists, that it builds, that it's not detrimental, that holiness isn't separate from life, against life, but rather the more holy, the more connected to Hashem, the more blessing, the more success in not only the spiritual, also in the physical, in the economy, a super empire. All that, the Kiddush Hashem, the sanctification of God's name that He's sown, and He's seen the holiness in this world, in life. And then, like we mentioned in Yeshayahu chapter 2, that the nations will come up to the mountain of God and show us the way. How do you do it? How does it succeed? How do you manage to have science and medicine and agriculture and government and politics, and all that is holy, all that is good, all that it succeeds? And then, right, the verse goes on, right? From Zion will Torah and the word of God from Yerushalayim. But it's not all at once. So we expect we're coming back from what we were, and gathering the exiles, we come back, and it's not so perfect, not so holy. It's not exactly the kingdom of the Mashiach ben David. But that's the whole point of, as we saw the sources, Kima Kima, the rabbis say, it'll come slowly, slowly, in stages, understanding the stages, the significance of the stages. So I wanted to say today, just to bring a few sources, that this importance to recognize and reveal the inner source, the inner content, the inner ideal, the divine ideal that's in this seemingly mundane developing process, secular process. On the surface, the first stage is the physical, as we saw in Yechezkel 36 and 37, the dry bones. First the bones come together, the body, the physical building, and then the neshama. The neshama is there from the beginning, pushing the whole process, but it's not revealed yet. It has to prepare its receptacle. So first you see this physical building, this physical, strong nation. And people are afraid, wait a minute, we wanted holiness, we wanted spirituality. Whereas religion, where it seems to be pushed aside or even negated? How do you relate to this newborn baby that is just very physical, just eating and drinking, just worried about security and economy? So I want to bring, again, usually we show the sources from the Tanakh, from the sages, from the Midrashim, the Chazal. But I want to bring a few sources of Rav Kook as a way of introduction, you might say, or what we were talking about, how the importance of seeing this inner source, of understanding what's taking place, what's developing, not just to see the baby, so to speak, at the moment, what is presently revealed, but what is developing underneath the surface. We mentioned a few times that this, what the rabbis say in Masechet Tamid, chapter Tamid 32, Ezu Chacham Haroet Hanolad, who is the wise that sees that which is being born, that which is developing, not just a moment. Everyone sees, the five senses pick up, the newspapers pick up that which is presently revealed, the moment, the external. But what is inside, like Rabbi Akiva, the vision of Rabbi Akiva that we mentioned, right? The end of Gemara Makot, page 24, how he sees the destruction, the jackals coming out of the Holy of Holies, the place that only the highest person, or the high priest, in the holiest day, in the holiest place, and they're jackals. What a defiling, what a defamation, and he's laughing. And they're rabbis, the other rabbis that see, and they're crying. But he sees something else. He sees the destruction. But he sees beyond that, and within that, what's taking place is the developmental process towards the rebuilding of the third temple even bigger, like it says in the end of Yechezkel. The third temple will be even greater. And he sees already the seeds of that in the destruction. He sees this Rabbi Akiva vision that we're trying to develop. And we'll see now a little bit of why that's so important. Not just that we understand. So now we see the redemption, even though others are disappointed or saying this is a secular movement, we're against it or we ignore it. So it's not just that we, Zionists, religious Zionists, as they call, that they say this is the redemption process. But we'll see how it affects the understanding of the redemption. Seeing the redemption brings the redemption. It's an activating force. It's like we mentioned that clouds covering the sunlight. And those that see the sun understand that there's a sun beyond the clouds, even though it seems to be dark and cloudy. But not just that they not just see and understand, but actually cause the clouds to disappear, so to speak, to remove the clouds, and then everyone will see the sun. In other words, this understanding actually activates and brings about that inner content becomes more externalized and manifested. It's not some intellectual speculation. So let's see. So you want the sources. So we have a few paragraphs of the writings of Rav Kook from Orot. This is Orot, but this is the paperback edition. The real edition is bigger, but easier to carry. This paperback edition, so to speak. Not condensed. The end of Orot, there's a section. There's different sections in Orot that Rav Kook, Rav Tziyuda put together for his father's writings. At the end, there's what's called Orot Yisrael, the lights of Israel. And here in chapter 6, there's a paragraph that, again, each paragraph here has to be learned and takes even a few classes to study. But just for our point that I wanted to bring down today, he talks here about this balance between the physical and the spiritual. In nations as well. Nations, the goal, the ideal is this normal balance between body and soul. There's a soul that gives life, meaning, purpose. And there's a body that reveals that in this world. You don't see souls in this world. The inner source, the life source is hidden, is concealed, is beyond the vision of our physical senses. But that gives life and is revealed in the manifestation in a body, in a living body, individual, or the nations that have this life source. And there has to be this balance that the soul needs the body, so to speak. It can't do its job. It can't be seen in the world. It can't have its influence and radiate and influence and uplift and elevate the world unless there's a body to receive it and to live it, to bring it down, so to speak, like an anchor that anchors into this world to connect to this world and raise this world. On the other hand, the body can't live alone. It thinks, well, just the body, just need the physical needs and eating and drinking. No, the body is just the body, the receptacle of that life source. You can't deny its source, otherwise it has no life either. So they both need each other. There has to be a certain balance. And so too, there's balance. When nations lose the balance, Rav Kook talks about here, the nations rise and fall. But it says in Israel, this equilibrium, this harmony, is built in. There's this balance that Am Yisrael can't lose that normal, healthy balance. There are times, and he writes in this paragraph, I call it like the pendulum. There's a pendulum, sometimes we go to the material extreme. Am Yisrael, unfortunately, we see, has also times that it forgets the spiritual and becomes more materialistic and idol worshipping and etc. It sees the physical as independent and alone. But other nations, when they reach that point, they fall off the map of history. They get so sick, so to speak, the body gets so sick, the heart stops, whatever, and they fall off the map of history. But Am Yisrael, this eternal nation that brings down God's name to the world, where it's not some man-made nation. This is the nation that we said in Yeshayahu 43:21 to broadcast, to bring down God's name to the world. This infinite, it says in the Yeshayahu also, Atem Medai, you are my witnesses. You bring down my name to the world. You are not temporary, a phenomenon that if you do the job, And if not, you're off. So what happens if we go off the track, if we go off the center balance? Then there's this mechanism that's built that forces us back to the center. In other words, it can't remain sick. Am Yisrael can't go off the track, get so sick beyond no return, beyond return. We get to the point, if we go off the track, there are these built-in systems, so to speak, because it's so sensitive and so crucial to the world, to the goal of God in the world, that there's forces that push you back. You can't stay. So he talks about that, how we went to the extreme of the physical in the first temple, idolatry, right? Seeing God as something physical, tangible, lowering the spiritual to something very materialistic, and then the second temple with the free hatred. And he talks about how this pendulum, so to speak, we go to the extreme material, and then we go to the other extreme as a remedy, like the Rambam writes. If you go to one extreme of the traits, the ideal is the happy medium, the golden medium, whatever. But the Rambam writes, but if you go to one extreme, you have to fix it, rectify it by going to the other extreme to counter that. You're very miserly, whatever. So you have to start giving more than the usual in order to balance it out, and then come to the middle. So sometimes there's this, he said he went to the exile, and there we became the other extreme. We were stripped of any physical material dealings on the national side. Just prayer and to learning Torah and praying for redemption. But on the physical side, the nation had no dealings. There was no nation. We had no land and no government. We were exiled. The Jews with their Torah, the mitzvot, the spiritual religion, but no manifestation of a kingdom that lives in this world has to deal with the physical world. And that was the remedy needed to treat that over-extreme materialism. But Rav Kook writes here that is also not good. It's written here, I'm not reading it all now, but we went to the other extreme. You can see line number 4. Maflaga ruchanit el chomrit muchach להיות בהפרזה קצת. No, we'll get to that. So we became, the first line, we had no, on the national level, we had no dealings in the physical world, in the practical, as a nation. Individuals eat, right? They had to make a livelihood, etc., living. But as a nation, like I said, there was no government, no army, no politics, no, etc. National needs just a spiritual, each individual keeping kosher, Shabbat, and kashrut, spiritual existence, so to speak, without the land underneath our feet. And that, he says, is also not the ideal. But as a remedy for the over-materialism, there's this over-spirituality, which, like also in diseases, right, in medical, right, that you're in a pharmacy, whatever, sometimes you give treatment, a drug that helps the disease, but sometimes it also has side effects. It's not the ideal. But to get to save the body, whatever, you have to do certain things. So to save this over-materialism, to bring us back to the normalcy, because we can't stay over-material. Am Yisrael can't remain, like others said, other nations become so materialistic and forget the ideal or whatever, and then they just drop off the stage of history. But Am Yisrael can't drop off. So there's a mechanism, that remedy, and that was the exile. That is the treatment, the other extreme treatment of the extra spirituality. And then he says, there's a time we come back to an awakening, back to the land of Israel. The nation starts to talk about nationhood, national awareness, national consciousness. That's what it says in line number 2. There's an awakening of the national consciousness. And that's a sign that the general disease of excessive materialism has been fixed within. Otherwise, God wouldn't let us come back. If we're not ready, we couldn't handle that materialism again. Coming back to materialism would, again, return us to what we were before. So it seems that now we're coming back to the center. We're coming back to the normalcy. You had over-spirituality, emphasized, so to speak, excessive, in order to come back to the middle. But, he says, it doesn't come right back to the middle. What does a pendulum do? If you pull the spring, the pendulum, whatever, to this side, what does it do when you let go? It doesn't just come to the middle and stop. It goes a little bit past until it starts to settle down, and then ultimately it ends up in the middle. So the beginning, the return, he says here, at the beginning, there is, again, a returning to haflaga, the line number 4. The netiyah rishonah, the first inclination, haflaga, from the over-spirituality, el hachomrit, muchrachat liyot b'hafraza k'tzat letzad hacharon. Now it returns to the latter, to the materialistic again. It doesn't just stop in the middle, this balance, equilibrium, normalcy of a healthy soul and a healthy body. It goes to materialism again. And that, he says, is the reason, one of the reasons he gives in different places, explains, but the chutzpah of the Ikar de Mashiach. That's a term from the Gemara, the end of Sotah. At the time of the Mashiach, the footsteps of the Mashiach, there's chutzpah yazge. There'll be this brazenness, this chutzpah, this rebellion. Hey, what, you think the time of the Mashiach is when everything is good, everyone is holy, everyone's religious, and etc. You think we're coming by the footsteps of the Mashiach. Now here it is. It's about getting better and better and better. But the rabbis say, no, the time of the Mashiach, there's this chutzpah, there's this brazenness, rebellion. But why? Rav Kook explains here. I get other places we have different angles to explain the same phenomenon. But one aspect is this over materialism, original in the beginning of the pendulum that goes a little bit more than the physical, returning like you've been in the air for 2,000 years. You come back to land, you grab onto it strong, like wow, I'm home again. So you become very materialistic. You're very happy to be back and feeling the land. And again, it seems to be over material. You say, oh, bye, what did we come back for? Just to go back to what we went out because of that in the beginning, over materialism. And now you're coming back to that again. So some people, like I said, are disappointed. They see, oh, returning, what did we do? 2,000 years for nothing, and we're just coming back to secular Zionism? No, that's just a temporary phenomenon, he says. This will not last, this extreme inclination towards the material, which exists at the beginning, but that's a temporary phenomenon. Because at the foundation of the nation is implanted this equilibrium, this balance. So now we're coming back to the normalcy. So indeed, as we mentioned in other sources, we saw how the first stage is indeed the physical. And it seems very scary that, again, it seems to be dominating, and only that, and even against the spiritual. Leave me alone. Don't give me your spirituality. Now I'm coming back to the land to build a healthy nation. Don't give me your religion or whatever. So it seems again that all is lost. In other words, we forgot the spiritual. What are we coming back for? Just to be a secular nation? He says, no, that balance is now the pendulum has gone through the stages of history, and now we're coming to the center. So at the beginning, there is indeed this extreme, but that's not the final word. That's a temporary phase towards the final and complete, because the fact that we're coming back that means that we're ready for it. Like the doctor knows now the child, I don't know, he's been sick for a while, he couldn't eat, he's not allowed to eat because the body isn't ready, and now he's becoming healthy, now he can start to eat. So the first eating, maybe he's not yet ready, but in general now he's ready to start to fill the functions of the physical, without them being a threat to the spiritual. But at the beginning it seems to be that, again, it's only material, if you just see the external. But ultimately he says, the storm will pass, this materialism, sort of the stormy will pass, and matters will change. It says, let's make sure. Okay. And the matters will clear up, and it will return to the proper equilibrium, the proper balance of spiritual. All the Jews will return back to Torah and mitzvot and recognize that we have a nation. We need a nation. The goal isn't just to be a physical and to get rid of the spiritual, but the goal isn't just to have the spiritual without the physical. It's not like going back to the spiritual again. Let's leave the physical. Who needs a government and army and politics? We want it to be a religion. No, the ideal is this normal, healthy manifestation of a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, like it says in chapter 19 in Shemot. Before we were given the Ten Commandments, you were told, you'll be unto me a kingdom of priests, a holy nation, but a holy nation, a government and a holy government. Economy, yes, economy, government, army, and a holy economy, holy army. All those used, with having the body and using it properly. That's the ideal. That's the manifestation of God's name in the world, as we mentioned a few times last time, right? In the Tanchuma, in Parshat Nesot Ted Zayin, that God wishes to have his place, Dira B'Tachtonim, in this world. Angels he has in the spiritual abode, but to manifest that lofty goal, that universal, that oneness, that holiness in this world, for that requires a body, like we said, to manifest it. So the goal is not to get rid of the body, to come back to spirituality that negates the body. But the body, unfortunately, sometimes, as we'll see, doesn't want the soul. It says, no, I don't need the body, I'm just coming here to build the land. But that's the true essence of what's taking place, is returning to that normal, healthy mishkal, and healthy balance. And the question is, what do the leaders have to do at that point? When we see this extreme materialism. In other words, the domination of the material side again. After coming back 2,000 years, we're returning. Great, fantastic. Coming back to the land. Oy vey, but look what it is. Let's call a spade a spade. Secular Zionism, secular nation, anti-religious even at some points, even against this. What do we do? How do you relate to this? Or what should the leaders do? And this is where we come in. This is what I underlined here. I wanted to mention to you why it's so important to recognize and reveal what's really taking place. What is God doing here? Not what the Zionists, whatever. They're not even aware of this inner essence, what is growing and brewing. Like the child is not aware of that inner neshama. He's just playing ball and developing his muscles, not for any future. He's just having a good time. But we, the parents, the adults, understand that that's the stages that he's building his motor development in order to house and to reveal ultimately that, right, he gets to the bar mitzvah, then he starts doing the mitzvot to reveal on that body the inner content. In other words, to understand the ideal that the physical serves. But the person himself, the child, or here, this fledgling nation itself is not aware of the source that's pushing it. But that's where we come in, to expose what is the real meaning of this. That's what he says here. Balei hashpa'ah, those of influence. Leaders, rabbis, the ones who are supposed to be the ones of influence, to understand beyond the moment, Rabbi Akiva vision, to see what's going on. Like the rabbis say, hakli kodemet lepri, the shell that perceives the fruits. So all you see is the shell, the bitter shell. Who wants to throw away the whole thing? But no, there's a fruit inside. Those that are aware of the fruit understand the process, the need for the shell that protects the fruit and lets it develop. But understands the stages and realizes the fruit inside. Don't throw the whole thing away. Balei hashpa'ah, those of influence. Tzrichim limtso et ha'orah ruchanit. They have to see, to find, for them first of all to be aware of it themselves, the spiritual light, sheyesh b'netiyah chomrit, which is in that material inclination. It's not material for the sake of material. Here we're returning to the national holiness of a Jewish holy kingdom. So now there's a national inclination. But you have to be aware and reveal and expose the spiritual light, the spiritual source and the roots, the neshama of that national inclination, of that material inclination. That exists. You don't have to put it in. You don't have to make it. You don't have to convert it. You don't have to convince him. That's the source of that, like when the child is born. The neshama is pushing the whole process. Even if the child says all day, I don't believe in neshamot, I don't know what you're talking about, I don't want God, I don't really, what are you talking about? He has a neshama, it's a package deal. When the baby's born, there's a holy soul. He's not aware of it? You're right. And the state, he doesn't have to be in the beginning. He doesn't have to do the mitzvot. A Jewish child doesn't do the mitzvot. What's going on here? No tefillin, no nothing. No, because that's how God prepared the world, such that the first stages are the physical building, build the body strong. And dafka, those that have that, we'll see maybe in chapter 19 in Orot Tchiyah, that there are people that are focused on the physical. In other words, their mission, their goal is to build that first stage of the nation of Israel, the foundation, called the body of Israel, the national body. And they're experts at that. They focus only on that. And don't bother me. They don't give me any, spiritualism. And I just want to build. They're experts in that. And that's how it has to be. In other words, we need people that first build. Like it says in the Gemara, when you build the Beit HaMikdash, bonim b'kodesh, bonim b'chol v'achar כך mekadshim. You first build I think it's Me'ilah, page 14. That you build in the secular, so to speak, you build in the material, you build the walls, and then you sanctify. The carpenters come in, build the temple, whatever. What do you mean, there's shorts and the hammers? What do you mean, what's going on? It's a holy place, yes, but first you build, and then you sanctify. And that we'll see what we mentioned. That's the whole stages of development of all of creation, from Adam Rishon, first the physical, dust to the earth, and then the neshama put into him. And so too we saw, again, when each one of us are born, the material motor development, and then in Yechezkel 36, 37, all these stages of history are such that first the physical, in order to house and prepare the vehicle, the expression of that strong spiritual. And we're coming back to a super strong spiritual. We're not just coming back to what it was in Europe, to be religious again and come back to what it was. The final and third return that we're now, and God has granted us in the grace of God to come back and to be part of this, is to return to a new level, a higher level that never was before, of returning of prophecy again. It says in Yoel chapter 3, everyone will prophesy. To prophesy, you need this strong energy, this strong, the strong receptacle. You have a super energy, wattage of electron. If you have a small body, it'll just explode. You have to first build a very strong house, body, empire, physical, strong empire, to return prophecy, that energy that will uplift the world, energize the world, and uplift all of creation. Not a small thing coming back to another nation you ever hear about again. Here, they'll be the strongest nation with the spiritual content of a prophet. We're going to talk about that soon, Zat Hashem, about prophecy. So for that, we have to have people that are focused on that. They're experts at that. That's all they want to hear about. Because otherwise, if you have a person that's half spiritual, half physical, he doesn't do either completely. In other words, he's how do you say pozel? He's when he's doing the physical, he's thinking about, I have to go pray, I have to go learn, and when he's doing the spiritual, in other words, each thing comes half-baked. To build a strong thing, you need each one focused and building and experts on their field. They're building the physical, and you have those. This is in the prophecy in Yirmiyahu. And the Gemara says in the Chulin that there's people that are the practical sides, and there's people that are the spiritual side, let's call it. You can also say this is the phenomenon that the rabbis talk about, Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. These two aspects, the nationalism, so to speak, building the physical, the Vilna Gaon, and Kol HaTorah. The student of the Vilna Gaon writes the teachings of the Vilna Gaon on the functions of the Mashiach ben Yosef. It's building the ingathering the exiles and the building of the land, bringing out the fruits, the physical. And there's the Mashiach ben David, the spiritual inner content of that. But the first stage is the physical, like Rav Kook writes in Orot Atchiyah, chapter 40. Again, once we start Orot, it's the first generation of the time of the Mashiach, of the footsteps of the Mashiach, at the beginning of this revealed redemption, of the natural redemption process of settling land of Israel, who machshir et hachomer shel Knesset Yisrael, rebuilds. He prepares the physical, the body, the material of the nation of Israel. And that's his job. And the people that are focused on that, they're experts. They're natural, their spiritual, how do you say, inclination is to that. They're materialistic people, and they have to be, because they have to build a strong body. Like I said, not half-baked. There are those, the rare few, that can be both, that can focus on the spiritual, understand the ideal of the spirit, and manifest that in the physical, be strong in building the physical. But otherwise, you have some spiritual people that understand the greater the spiritual goal. They, how do you say, neglect, they look down upon, why do you have to focus on the physical, building the body? Yeah, maybe eat 1 grain of salt a day, whatever. In other words, you don't need the physical. The main thing is the spiritual. They're so focused on the spiritual, which is the most important, and they understand it's the most important. They deny, they neglect the physical development. And to return to the final redemption, it has to be a super strong body to house a super strong soul. We're not coming back to a weak, broken body that is a spiritual. That's not the ideal. So these people, unfortunately, again, there are those that can do both, that realize that, yes, the Shema is the main thing of life. The spiritual is the divine, is the main essence. But that requires a strong body. I eat properly, I live properly, I sleep what I'm supposed to. In other words, they don't negate the body. It's not one or the other. But usually most of the people it's one or the other, either or, physical or spiritual. So in the beginning, that's what Yirmiyahu says. This separately, and also the Gemara in Chulin that's on that verse. That this separately, the physical separately, and the spiritual separately. Until they build, Rav Kook writes another chapter, in chapter 19 in Orot Atchiyah, that full characters build this final ultimate goal. It has to be complete, like I said, a full building of the physical, strong spiritual, then they can unite and be what it's supposed to be. Like I said, a strong soul and a strong body. Like the Shlach Kadosh, right? A healthy body and a healthy soul, a healthy body. In the exile, we didn't have that. And the goal was you had to save the spiritual from all the threats outside, to reclude, to retreat from the outside world. Just build the spiritual, save the spiritual. We retreated from the physical. Like I said before, we didn't have any national physical in pursuits or development. We couldn't. And that's the problem of the exile. That's what it came to fix. The over-materialism. So there we were stripped from all that. So the ideal of Judaism was, again, I don't call it a monk, but to stay away from the physical. But now we're coming back to the ideal of a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Not holy angels, holy nation. So what are the leaders supposed to do at this point when they see these people that are focused on the material? Again, what's going to be with religion? What's going to be with spirituality? It's all gone the drain? No, they have to reveal and understand the process the hand of God that is behind all this. What is developing here is a very strong body indeed. But why? To house what? The very strong soul that is pushing, that is developing, that is waiting to come to expression here. So they have to reveal and understand the light, the spiritual source that is in this national material inclination. Vet matarata pnimit, and its inner goal. What is the inner goal of that physicality? If you ask the people, oh, we're just building a secular state to be like everyone else at the UN, other flag at the UN. But that's not what's taking place here. The neshama knows differently. God knows differently. He's doing differently. He is bringing about the nation, the ideal of all of creation, to bring back this holy nation back to the world. So they have to understand the ideal that the physical serves, even if the people themselves are not aware of that source. But that's where you come in, the leaders come in, to expose. And look what he says now. So what's that important for? So now they know the source. Ukefi mashi galuze barabim. And according to the measure that they reveal this in the masses, in other words, in public, this message, this understanding of what's really behind the scenes, what is developing, what's the true significance of this return of the Jews back to the land? Just another secular nation, other people that are living in the land of Israel. For that we came back. And that's why we have all these problems now that are questioning, what are we doing here? What did we come back for? Maybe we stole the land, maybe it's not ours, maybe why be an obstacle to peace in the world? Maybe we shouldn't be here. These are all the problems that are coming because that force us to get to the inner reason. If you don't, like I said before, there's divine mechanism and system that doesn't let the nation forget itself. If you forget who you are, history, the reality, will force you to come to grips with understanding of who you really are. So at the beginning, there'll be a lot of questions come up, like the adolescent. He was happy being a child. All of a sudden he's growing up. Now he has all these questions. Search for identity. Who am I? What am I living for? Suicidal tendencies even. What am I here for? At the beginning he was growing and developing, didn't have any questions. Playing ball, developing, having fun, enjoying life. And all of a sudden, wait a minute, what am I here for? What's my purpose in life? What, you were such a good child before, you were so happy. Well, all of a sudden you're now depression and questioning and testing on drugs and trying all these different things. What happened to you? Not because he's less. He's now ready for the next stage, towards adulthood. Now, the next phase, the neshama is now demanding its expression of developing to the next stage. You can't stay on the previous stage. I mean, God doesn't let you. The mechanism is such that you can't stay a child and be happy, so to speak. You can be happy, of course, you will be happy. But there's this transition stage that you can't be happy the way you were, because you can't be satisfied. Because if you were satisfied, you'd stay where you were. You'd stay like the child of the womb, the embryo, whatever, in the womb. Was happy there, whatever, wouldn't come out. So there's contractions. In other words, the negative, what Rav Kook calls later, the crisis that take place is in order to force out the next stage. You can't stay put. You have to develop. You have to grow to the next stage. So the first stage means you're not happy anymore. You're not satisfied with the previous stage. So it's a difficult period. It's a very, how do you say, a very difficult transition period. It looks like all is lost. Like I said, suicidal tendencies. What's going to be with the child? Maybe he's not going to make it. But no, those are the stages that ultimately force and bring to the next stage. Like I said, there's contractions that don't let you stay. But that's where we come in to help the child, the adolescent, know where he's going, to show him the light at the end of the tunnel, where he's headed. That's what we said here. To show the nation what is the true matrata pini, what is the true inner goal, what is the true reason we're coming back. Now, what are you really ready for? What are you looking for? What is your neshama demanding? What is the next stage that you need? Not just I think you need. In other words, that's the whole process, is the neshama in stages unfolding. So at the beginning, it didn't need recognition. The child is growing with or without understanding who he is. The next stage requires who you are. Rav Kook has an article on this in Mamrei Ariyah. It's called the Tkufat HaMavar, the transition period. The first stage you can call the instinct stage. It's this instinctual development, no teaching, no understanding. He's growing. The next stage requires the understanding of who you are, why you are. And that's where these Balei Hashpah, these people of influence, the rabbis, us, in other words, where we come in, is to fill in the next stage. In other words, to facilitate and expose where you're going. What is the true meaning of your life? Not to give you something external, but that which exists, that which has been pushing them from the beginning, that you weren't aware for, you didn't need to be aware for, but now you have to be aware of who you really are. Know thyself, as a scholar once wrote. To know who you really are, the greatness, the significance of your return to the land. It's not what you thought. You thought it was just coming back away, running away from pogrom, running away from Holocaust, just to live in peace. It's more than that. This is to bring about a change in mankind, in reality, to change man. We mentioned you beat your swords into plowshares, like it's in that verse in Yeshayahu chapter 2 that I mentioned before. It's a new revolution in human culture that Am Yisrael is about to bring to the world, a change in everything, to elevate, to purify, to rectify, to perfect the world. L'taken olam b'malchut Shaddai, we pray for at the end of Leilul Shabbat every day. End of our prayer. L'taken olam, to fix this world, to connect it all to the divine, to the absolute good. And that's what's taking place. We just thought we were coming back to build, like to play ball, whatever to do. And now you expose the true essence, and then it makes sense to the child because he's ready for that. He's searching for that. And the Shema is waiting for the next stage, is pushing that. It won't let you go back to where you were, be satisfied where you were. You'll have to go back. And the more we expose it, he says, the more these rabbis or leaders, us, the more we expose this to the masses, this disease of the chutzpah that we said before, the rebellion against religion and Judaism, etc., will be lessened. It will lose its bad negative signs. And the nation will now become aware, awakened to its true natural essence. Come back to itself, to be itself. The child up top wasn't aware of himself. He was just building the physical side, which is important. But now stage 2 comes to culminate the process. You have to be aware of it. And the more you expose it, the more you're aware of it yourself. We, the teachers, the leaders, we expose this. First of all, recognize it ourselves and reveal it. The divine content, the true content. Then we reveal to this child its true and supreme and supernal value. It's more than you thought. And he wakes up to it and it makes sense to him because it's really him. It's not something external. The body rejects external, like transplants. The body doesn't want something external. I don't want to be religious and be like you and be in yeshivot or whatever. I want to be me. But what we're talking about here is exposing the true me. And when you do that properly, and since it is him, it's not some philosophy, religion. Since it really is him, the more you expose it, the more, like you put the mirror in front of him, he sees it's the real him, and he's happy and he's proud, and it facilitates the process that becomes to what it says here. The nation wakes up to itself, to its natural reality. And more will be revealed upon it the splendor of its soul. That's the effect of understanding this process. These people, it doesn't sound that they understand the process and sit on the side and hope it gets better. But they activate it. It's an activating force. The more they reveal this bigger picture, this understanding, they understand that there's the sun behind these clouds, even in spite of the clouds, there's something great that's taking place at the Shema. The more they talk about, aware of it, and reveal it, then the more it causes the neshama to be activated, become more exposed, and the people themselves feel it. And wow, this is me. In other words, the nation wakes up to itself and starts to live itself in all of its splendor, physical and spiritual, and wakes up to reveal the splendor of its soul. B'ezrat Hashem, we should be those that help this nation. There's 2 more, maybe we'll get to next time. But to be those that are amongst those that can help and reveal and facilitate this process of redemption. To understand it, it's not so simple, because on the outside, what you see, and we'll see the next paragraphs, it's very anti and it's not holy, like the child is rebelling against this neshama. I don't want neshama. But we understand what's there in spite of all his cries to the contrary. There's a neshama. God is bringing this process and doing this, and we have to be aware what are the stages and how it develops and how to help it come to completion. And we mentioned last week one of the keys the rabbis tell us in the Tikkunei Zohar, that the generation of the Mashiach is good on the inside and evil on the outside. There's an evil exterior. So if you judge by the behavior, evil, rotten, get rid of this. Like I said, the shell that precedes the fruit. This is a shell, evil, rotten, secular. We don't want it. But there's a fruit inside. If you're not aware of that fruit, like I said, you say cut off the whole thing. If you're aware of the fruit, you know how to expose it and help it water it and help it plant and grow and develop till the fruit is revealed, and then what beautiful fruit is there. So there are a few, maybe in far between, that those that understand this, and that's what we're coming to be, those that are the privilege and the obligation to be these balei hashpa'ah, those leaders that understand and see and reveal and cause more and more that the negative signs, there are negative signs to this chutzpah. Rav Kook was aware of the negative, of the brazenness and the rebellion. But to see, like Rabbi Akiva, the inside, like when he's the destruction, Rabbi Akiva sees also the seeds of what's coming out. That's what he said before, at the beginning. He is who is the wise that sees what's inside and developing and help brings it out. And that's our goal, and that's what we're trying to study and to develop, to be among those, and to bring this redemption to its final stages and fulfillment. B'ezrat Hashem, b'merav yameinu.